So I am going to get us started. I will be facilitating the meeting today because Commissioner Gagne Holmes is unable to attend today. I think this is like the first Children's Cabinet meeting she's ever missed. So she's always usually here. Molly Bogart is here to represent Maine DHHS. But I will get us started. We have a full agenda, and I'm really excited to have the folks from the Data Innovation Project at USM here to provide us information about the final evaluation of the Maine Career Exploration Program. They were here last year around this time, providing an update and information about our interim evaluation. And they are here to talk to us about the final evaluation of the 2 years of our Maine Career Exploration Program. We wanted to provide a couple of quick updates before they dive into their presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Mariette for a very quick update on the Child Safety and Family Wellbeing Plan. She will be here at the next meeting giving a more in-depth update, but we wanted to give her a chance to just talk about the status of the Child Safety and Family Wellbeing Plan. Mariette, take it away.
Thank you so much, Anna. Good morning, everyone. Yes, as Anna said, I wanted to provide just a brief update on Maine's Child Safety and Family Wellbeing Plan, which I have presented to this group many times before, but this plan is a statewide plan to keep children safe by keeping families strong, developed in partnership between the Department of Health and Human Services and the Maine Child Welfare Action Network, with lots of coordination and support and conversations with all of the other members of the Children's Cabinet. I will drop a link into the chat with a link to the plan. But this plan really organizes a 5-year strategic plan to ensure that parents and caregivers can provide safety, health, and nurturing care for their children, and that families experience a supportive and coordinated child safety and family well-being system. At the May meeting, I will be joined by Melissa Hackett, who is the coordinator of the Maine Child Welfare Action Network, our partner behind this plan, for a more in-depth presentation. But if you have any questions between now and May as you peruse the plan, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks, Anna.
That's great. And I just wanted to give a very quick update on some work that's in partnership between Maine CDC and other state agencies, and as well as some external partners. So Maine CDC is bringing Eileen Forlenza to Maine to focus on strategies for partnering with parents and in particular families to build and affect policy and programming. And there'll be a series of events that Eileen is participating in. Just by way of background, or Eileen Forlenza has really led the effort first in Colorado and then nationwide as an expert on family engagement and family partnership, and has been providing technical assistance to Maine CDC, and will be providing greater technical assistance through these events to staff from Maine from Maine DHHS, as well as the Department of Education and Department of Labor and Department of Corrections. So we will have staff at this participating in events with Eileen. The first event is March 26th. She's doing a full day Elevating Parents' Voice Summit that will involve a lot of staff from state agencies, as well as our partners at Maine Parent Federation and Maine Parent Ambassador Program. They are advertising this far and wide opportunity to really learn and talk about efforts to create structures to include family voice and parent voice in our work statewide, both at nonprofits as well as in state agencies. We then will be hosting with the Children's Cabinet staff an 1.5 to almost 2-hour discussion with Eileen on March 27th. That will include the Children's Cabinet staff across agencies, really to talk specifically about how we are establishing structures and opportunities to engage parents in our policymaking, in our work to strengthen programs, and how we can all work together to ensure that we are doing this in a way that creates efficiencies, does not engage the same parents in lots of different work, but how do we work together to engage parents across agencies in an effective way, as well as recognizing that we don't want to be calling on the same parents all the time. and we need to be respectful of parents' needs, as well as thinking about compensating parents for their time, and other policies to ensure that we are engaging parents in a way that really elevates their voice, and influences our policy and programs, and really treats them as a partner in this work together. So we will have a chance to meet with Eileen to really talk through all of those opportunities. Just by way, we will also be talking about how we really have incorporated elevating parent voice in many of our action plans, from the PDG strategic plan, to the child safety and family well-being plan, to a variety of plans, and thinking about how do we ensure that we are meeting the goals of those plans through this work of family engagement. So we're all excited about those conversations. Eileen will also be meeting with some DHHS leadership as well to talk about opportunities for us to continue to strengthen this work across agencies. Just one last update, very quick update. The BEST initiative, the Building Ecosystems for Thriving Youth initiative that we are working on with the Forum for Youth Investment, shifting from kind of the gathering of information stage to more of an implementation stage and strategic planning stage, where we are pulling the core team together along with our people with lived experiences to talk about what we learned over the last fall as we brought folks from state agencies together, as well as community-based organizations. There is a real interest in how do we strengthen programming, positive youth development programming, with a focus on that near-peer mentoring. And so the core team will be thinking about how do we support that work at the community level, and come back to the Children's Cabinet staff as well as the Children's Cabinet to talk about next steps. We are not at that point yet, but wanted to give folks a heads up that we are really making that shift now to doing some more of that strategic planning. And so we'll keep folks in that. So I am now going to turn it over to the team at the Data Innovation Project, which includes Julia Boudron-Smith, Sarah Goen, and Madison Burke. And they really led the effort to evaluate our career exploration program. They'll talk a little bit about each part of the program and how this evaluation was structured, and really highlight the good work that's being done across the state to ensure that we are connecting young people to job readiness programming, paid work experience, and the career exploration. So I'm going to let you guys take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anna, for that great lead in. And it's also very exciting just to hear about some of the other initiatives that the Children's Cabinet is taking on, because I think this really does tie right into the very good work that you're undertaking. So hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Kushels-Goen, and I am a Senior Research Associate at the Catherine Cutler Institute for Health and Social Policy at USM. I manage our Children, Youth, and Families Justice Policy portfolio, and I direct the Data Innovation Project, which is what brings me here today. It's very much my pleasure to be joined by Julia and Madison, without whom this report would not have been possible, nor this presentation. So many thanks to them. And again, we're here to talk with you about our final findings from our evaluation of the Maine Career Exploration Initiative. So next slide, because I think Julia is driving today. Great, thank you. So of course, you are all intimately familiar with the goals of the Maine Career Exploration Initiative, but as a short refresher, they are to connect young people to career opportunities, fund paid work experiences, build out career exploration programming in schools, and establish infrastructure that supports these programs. And the great banner news, the headline news, is that over the 2-year time period of this initial investment, the Maine Career Exploration exceeded its goal to provide meaningful paid work experiences across the state, with a final total of 6,066 experiences, which was 3,418 experiences in the second year alone. But that isn't the only major success. Madison and Julia have a lot of other outcomes and insights that they're going to share. But before we get there, next slide. I just wanted to give you a reminder of our approach. So all of these additional kind of outcomes and insights really come from a range of sources. We used a mixed methods approach for this evaluation to really get rich perspectives from diverse groups. And we collected data over the 2-year period spanning roughly July 2022 to August 2024. And so during that time, we conducted a youth exit survey with 322 youth completing that survey. We conducted focus groups with 26 program coordinators representing both the CBO programs and the ELO programs, so the Children's Cabinet programs and the Department of Education programs. And we also conducted an employer survey with a total of 119 employers completing at 2 different data collection time points. We also reviewed grantee program reports, their numbers and their narrative. We conducted a literature review, and we utilized a participatory photo voice method. And we used that to gather stories highlighting the experiences of youth participants. That's an approach where we have the young people respond to some prompts, take some photographs, and then ask them a series of questions about those photographs, what they mean to them, and why they selected those photographs to represent their experience. And it's a way of just engaging them a little bit more than just peppering them with some boring old questions. We had a total of 16 youth completing the photo voice experience and giving us those wonderful profiles that are in the final interim and final reports. So that's what we did to craft this evaluation report and the sources for our findings. And with that, I'll turn it over to Madison and Julia to walk us through some of those key outcomes and findings.
Thanks so much, Sarah. So across the board, program coordinators, youth participants, and employers overwhelmingly reported positive experiences with this program. 98.6% of the youth who were surveyed about their experiences either agreed or strongly agreed that they had a good experience with the program overall. Employers felt similarly, with 99% of employers reporting that they would host a work experience again. And both youth and employers gained a lot from this program. For youth, this included what you see on the screen here, so access to new academic pathways and experiences, the development of 21st century job readiness skills and abilities, social and emotional growth, increased adult connections and networks, clarity around their future plans and opportunities, increased optimism for the future, and many youth even gained more long-term employment through participating. So access to hands-on and community-based learning opportunities were really crucial to the youth development of in this program, as these opportunities were often otherwise unavailable to the youth outside the program. This is especially true for youth from rural communities with small school districts, at schools where career exploration programming was brand new, and for out-of-school youth who engaged in the program. The program was also offered youth more choice and variety in their academic pursuits, which was really exciting and motivating for the youth who participated. And as I mentioned previously, this increase in choice and autonomy helped to develop those 21st century job readiness skills and abilities in the areas of communication, teamwork, problem solving. And the majority of youth experienced some or major change in those areas. So 89% experienced change in their communication skills and problem solving skills, and about 84% experienced change in their teamwork skills. Next slide.
We're seeing it, Madison.
Sorry, I think it was delayed on my screen. Sorry about that. One of the strongest areas of growth that we saw among program engaged youth was related to their social and emotional development, as well as those increased connections to adults and networks. So our evaluation found that the MCE career exploration activities had a positive impact on youth's increased confidence, their self-efficacy, their self-esteem, and also their motivation. And this is because the activities were structured and supported opportunities for increased self-awareness and skill development. These personal developments were strengthened through the support of adults. When asked, 97% of youth thought that the support that they received at their worksite was helpful, and 95% of youth made connections with adults who they thought could help their career. A specific example of the impact an adult had on a youth in the MCE program comes from Ryan, who participated. He was one of our Photo Voice participants in this evaluation. Ryan shared about his worksite experience working with animals. He said, "This is Dr. McGill. She and I really connected. She told me that I have the skill that I was born with, like to connect with animals. She supported me as soon as she met me. She was excited to hear all about me, what I plan to do, what I want to do there. She listened to that, and she gave me help in doing what I wanted to do." So this was just one glowing review, but there were so many similar stories from our youth who were interviewed, both as part of the Photo Voice project and even small anecdotes that we saw in our qualitative data coming from our survey. So overall, it was clear that adults played a huge role on the success of youth in this program. Changed for me this time. There we go. Okay. Youth also gained an understanding of what opportunities exist in their community. So they learned about workplace culture, the skills needed to be successful in that workplace, and also the environment of that workplace. And this allowed them to better understand whether a job or field is a right fit for them, or if it's different from what they expected it would be. So as one ELO coordinator explained, "It is equally important for our students to realize what they thought they were so passionate about truly isn't something they want to pursue in the future." Our youth survey responses reflected an increased awareness of career opportunities, with 88.5% of youth reporting some or major change in their awareness of the opportunities in Maine. 87.6% reported an increased understanding of their future goals and aspirations. And 84.2% reported that the MCE program had a direct impact on their future plans. For those who didn't feel that the MCE program impacted their future plans, many shared that they really already knew what they wanted to do, and the MCE program just helped to solidify those plans. So an increased understanding of what opportunities are available also led to an increase in optimism for these youth. So 92.5% of surveyed youth agreed that they felt more optimistic about their futures after participating in the program. On the left side of this slide, and it might be a little bit small, but you'll see the plans that surveyed youth had after completing the program. And if you're wondering about those percentages, they could choose more than one option. So that's why they might seem a little wonky. Starting college and looking for a job were some of the top future plans that we saw reported from youth. But I also wanted to highlight that a large portion of youth reported interest in starting their own business, which is a pretty unique statistic to highlight. And I also think that it may reflect some of the ways that this program can build independence and self-confidence. So I thought that was neat to highlight. Next slide. So, of course, the MCE program also really provided that launch pad for youth to begin their journey into the workforce. For many young people, this was their first time working, and studies show that youth ages 16 to 18 who are connected to the workforce have an increased likelihood of employment in adulthood, higher future earnings, and also increased job quality. And these positive outcomes are especially true for youth who face increased barriers to their social and economic well-being. Among our 255 program youth who were surveyed and indicated that they had a work experience, 32.5% received a job offer because of their participation. And of those who were offered a job, 77.1% accepted the job that they were offered. It's important to note that youth who had a paid work experience were nearly twice as likely to be offered a job compared to youth with unpaid work experiences, though this may be in part due to the capacity of that individual employer to offer them a longer term opportunity. So now I'm going to turn it over to Julia to discuss what the employers gained from this program.
Thank you, Madison, and good morning, everyone. And so first, Employers gained new connections and expanded existing relationships with schools, community-based organizations, and Maine's next generation of employees. So as shown in these included quotes, employers really appreciated engaging young people, and often they participated in the program because they thought it was important to expose youth and young adults to the working environment. Additionally, many employers shared that they helped youth become more prepared for life after high school, but that also youth taught them new things too as they were engaging youth. Second, the program contributed to expanding Maine's workforce and workforce pipeline. We already saw from Madison's slide some of those employee opportunities, but on the employer side, 3 out of 4 that were surveyed thought that the program helped attract talent to their industry or field, while 65% of employers thought the program had the moderate or major benefit of providing information about the next workforce generation skills. And then still, 3 out of 5 employers thought the program was addressing Maine's workforce shortages. Many employers reported that youth filled open positions during the experience and also afterwards. And actually, 41% of surveyed employers reported offering a job to young people because of the experience. And Madison, I'll pass it back to you for one more slide.
Awesome. Thanks, Julia. So despite the overwhelmingly positive feedback from youth who were engaged in the MCE program, our evaluation data did reveal notable differences between youth from rural and urban areas. So without getting too deep into the nitty-gritty statistical tests we use to determine these findings, which are detailed in our report if you're curious, we found that youth from rural areas were more likely to have shorter length work experiences of around 0 to 6 weeks compared to youth from urban areas who tended towards longer work experiences of 7 weeks or more. Rural youth also reported being less motivated to participate in the program by things like hands-on learning, help with graduation or high-set attainment, and also earning a career certification when they were compared to their urban youth counterparts. And this might suggest that perhaps there are other motivations going on that are encouraging them to participate in the program that were not measured by this evaluation. And then while rural youth also had significant gains because of participating in the MCE program, these positive impacts were slightly lower in the areas of improved communication and problem-solving skills when compared to urban youth. Finally, rural youth reported slightly less clarity around their goals and aspirations for the future, their knowledge of career opportunities in Maine, and also their optimism about their future compared to urban youth. So those last little points that I shared could definitely be influenced by limited access to desired jobs and fields due to those geographic constraints. So that's important to keep in mind. These results do suggest that rural youth may, as I said, have other factors that are driving their participation and their success in the program that are distinct from urban youth and that may not have been adequately represented in this evaluation. So gaining a better understanding of those needs and motivations of rural youth will allow the MCE program to better meet those needs moving forward. So sending it back to you, Julia.
Thank you, Madison. So we are going to now look at what makes the MCE program work best. And, as we highlighted this back in October when we had the preliminary findings, but truly the funded program coordinator role is a cornerstone of the MCE program, and it's critical to its success. That's because coordinators are vital to helping youth identify their aspirations. They provided and developed a range of learning opportunities that were tailored to individual student and youth interests. And they do all of this while supporting employers through the process of working with young people. So as noted in this quote, it's a lot of behind the scenes work, and the funded position affords coordinators the time and capacity needed to do that work. And so you'll continue to see how the coordinator role is embedded in the other essential program aspects that I'm going to share over these next 4 slides. So extended learning opportunities and work experiences, they're not built on good intentions alone. Structure and clear expectations are necessary for young people and employers to achieve successful outcomes. And MCE coordinators offered structures of support that helped create and maintain participant successes, and that really made the program work best. So as previously noted, they worked one-on-one with youth to explore their aspirations and find or create opportunities that best fit youth interests. Second, youth found success when coordinators offered ongoing and consistent communication and check-ins. Looking at our survey data and the qualitative questions, youth really talked about how they relied on these check-ins with the coordinators and how the check-ins often motivated them to complete the program, especially when challenges arose. Coordinators also offered holistic support. So especially with CBO coordinators who were working with young people facing complex challenges like navigating the juvenile justice system, they were connecting youth with other types of services that they need. And then ultimately for youth, it really came down to just having support no matter what life threw their way. Many youth wrote about how they could trust their coordinator to keep working with them, even if, they maybe missed a day of work or something else had gone on. Employers, they were most successful when coordinators provided them and youth a clear orientation to program guidelines, including expectations and responsibilities for both parties, and helped youth to be accountable to these expectations. Often employers that were hesitant to enter the program ended up doing so once coordinators detailed how much support they, the coordinator, would be providing to youth and talked with employers about what they, the employer, needed in order to participate. And these critical recruitment steps also helped coordinators determine if the employer would be the right fit for a young person. And so the coordinator then would make the match and proceed to provide ongoing support to the youth and the employer throughout the work experience. In a handful of cases, and really it was less than 5, employers expressed not receiving an orientation or, this level of support from a coordinator, and those employers gave lower experience ratings and thought that the program had less of an impact on Maine's workforce. So the MCE program also worked best when coordinators adapted programming and participation opportunities to fit youth and employer needs. And as I mentioned, these adaptations included hands-on opportunities that directly tapped into youth motivations and aspirations, but it also meant coordinators helping youth find opportunities that enabled them to meet other needs. So like if they needed a credit attainment or they needed compensation in order to be able to participate. While many career exploration opportunities paired one youth with one business or organization, coordinators also used multi-youth ELO groups and CBO cohorts to make career exploration accessible and relevant to more than one young person at a time. And this approach was particularly helpful for hard-to-reach businesses or hard-to-place industries. Additionally, youth who benefited from this approach were often under 18, facing social emotional challenges or lacking prior work experience. And so those pairing ups or cohorts or group experiences really helped that pocket of youth. Coordinators also helped youth connect to employers that could best support them. So for example, there was a couple instances where CBO coordinators paired systems involved youth with employers who had lived experience that made them uniquely positioned to understand and support these youth. Likewise, coordinators aim to connect employers to youth with specific needed skill sets or abilities, if that's how the employer was going to be able to engage. And then finally, coordinators offered employers tiered levels of engagement. So that ranged from a one-day job shadow up to a multi-week work experience, which really created right-sized opportunities for employers. So consistent with existing work readiness research, this evaluation found that compensation played a critical role in the effectiveness as well as the accessibility of the program approach. And compensation was particularly important for CBO engaged youth and for employers. So over the 2 years of programming, almost half of the surveyed CBO engaged youth were motivated by pay to participate in the program compared to only 29% of ELO engaged youth. This significant difference can be attributed to the fact that CBO programs primarily served low-income youth, and pay had a meaningful impact on helping make ends meet. While compensation played a role for about a third of the ELO engaged youth, coordinators consistently expressed how credit attainment or having experience outside of the classroom drove youth participation rather than pay. Compensation actually acted as an even larger incentive for employers. So for those that we surveyed, 67% said they would not have been able to participate in the program if they needed to compensate youth. And then we did another analysis of the employers where we looked at the business or organization type of the respondents. And when we incorporated that, we saw that 9 out of 10 municipal or quasi-governmental organizations responded that they would not have been able to participate, which was higher than the 61% of nonprofits and the 57% of for-profits who said that. And so number 5 here, the evaluation revealed that the programming worked best as programs and pathways were formalized. Specifically in year 2, coordinators deepened relationships and collaborations with schools and community partners. And this meant that school staff better understood how ELOs fit into the bigger academic pictures. And teachers, they more readily integrated job readiness content into their classrooms. And then additionally, schools were starting to formally integrate and link departments and resources and opportunities. For CBOs, the MCE program helps them have a wider reach, and they detailed how they could provide more comprehensive programming by linking their MCE-funded activities with other workforce development resources to really holistically approach the needs and the services the youth they were working with. MCE coordinators readily recognized how various state departments like the Department of Education or the Department of Labor and entities like Jobs for JMD provided vital collaboration and technical assistance, which helped ground and expand MCE program approaches. And then in return, the lessons learned from MCE programming and the expanded offerings can help inform what efforts should be formalized and prioritized to support statewide expansion or this type of programming in the future. So I'm not going to dig too deep into this slide since these were first identified and described in the interim report, and there are known challenges in this state, but some of the ongoing challenges that need to be considered for future programming and that continue to impact the MCE program in year 2 included a lack of access to reliable transportation, especially in rural areas, and also geographical limitations. Specifically, that businesses and industries are not equally distributed throughout Maine, so this did limit opportunities for youth in certain areas. Additionally, there are employer recruitment and field restrictions. Those came up when there were, certain employers maybe lacked the bandwidth or skills to support an inexperienced or young worker. And then there were cases in certain fields where age or certification or licensure requirements proved to be a barrier for youth to either engage in that field or engage more intensely with a longer work experience. And then finally, competitive or higher pay at jobs that offer experience but do not align with targeted skill development or career exploration goals can make it difficult to recruit youth into the program because these big box stores, and I think both Walmart and Dunkin' Donuts came up quite a bit, are paying such high hourly rates that youth are choosing to work at those locations instead of engage in the program. So that's everything from me. Sarah, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you, Madison. So that was a lot of information and insight. So looking ahead, really, where do we go from here? What are kind of the major threads that we need to keep pulling? So next slide, Julia. I think first and foremost, we really learn across this, both the youth outcomes, the employer outcomes, and the what makes the program work analysis. We really learned how vital the program coordinator role is to the ongoing success of these programs. They play that crucial role both in guiding students and helping them find appropriate pathways, and also in supporting those employers. So prioritizing that career exploration program coordinator role is really, really critical to continuing this work. As well as supporting some of that growing formalization and growth of the coordinator support network. So investing in more training and educational opportunities to prepare those new coordinators for success, and also provide ongoing professional development or sharing for those who are already in that role. We also, I think it became pretty clear, or is pretty clear, that flexible and responsive programs are yielding those positive impacts, particularly for youth who need that extra support to succeed, and that offering those opportunities through the community-based organizations is an effective way to expand opportunities for them. And that kind of more flexible funding with less stringent guidelines allow organizations to really take that holistic approach, and continuing programs like the Children's Cabinet investment should be prioritized as a particularly effective way to reach those more vulnerable youth who are perhaps a little more disconnected from some of these other formal systems. Next slide. We also, of course, know that career exploration programs in Maine simply wouldn't be possible without the participation of our employers to help students gain access to those real world experiences and that exposure to different careers. And so I think an interesting finding that emerged from our evaluation was how much the relationship building, flexibility, and ongoing support sustained that employer engagement, not just student engagement. So when employers themselves have the right support, they can provide better, more meaningful opportunities for youth. So really focusing on those key elements that make employer involvement possible means funding, again, for that program coordinator who's integral to that ongoing relationship building with the employers, and allows them to tailor those engagement levels to meet employers' needs. And then, there could be additional incentives for employer participation, strategies like tax credits or subsidies, or more doing deeper alignment between the career exploration program and some of the critical industries and growth sectors. So some more intentionality in terms of building out the programs. Again, to that compensation point, compensation certainly promotes equitable access to career exploration and that employer engagement, but it has to be competitive with those local jobs that often offer the higher pay but limited career growth. And so I think that's an area and a point to continue studying in terms of the effects of how competitive pay can be better used as a tool to expand and extend the impact of these programs and opportunities. Next slide. And then I think in, our kind of final key takeaway area is, in that second year, as Julia alluded to, program coordinators were starting to see that better collaboration. They were starting to grow maybe some regional partnerships or outside the building partnerships, and stronger ties with other programs like WIOA to maximize those resources. And so this really points to the idea of formalized programming and pathways that are looked at from a statewide approach. So not just investing in school by school efforts, but really coordinating partners like, DOE, DOL, Children's Cabinet, and collaborating with those organizations like JMG, the Rural Aspirations Project, the MCE Engaged Schools, employers, and all those stakeholders to really pinpoint the essential program elements that are needed to make this work, and then to create some of those intentional yet flexible frameworks and connections that support program design, as well as continuing to provide that support and technical assistance through JMG and other strong bodies that really help support those new and existing programs. These are really kind of critical next steps to scale up high quality career exploration experiences and to address some of those challenges and ongoing challenges like the transportation challenge, the geographic issues with some of those industries, and some of those other challenges and the effects of rurality that continue to kind of pop up and mitigate some of the positive impacts that these programs can have. And with that, we say thank you very much for your time. We have a lovely closing quote to leave you with. And I think we have some time for discussion or questions. And I don't know, Anna, if there's anything that you want to kick us off with or questions that you'd like to pose to the group to consider, or questions to us about our findings or our methods or anything like that.
Great. And just give folks a chance to think of their questions. I did want to remind folks that the evaluation was specifically of the over 20 schools that provided extended learning opportunities. So they hired ELO coordinators to be doing that extended learning opportunity work with students for 2 years. And then the 5 community-based organizations that work specifically with historically disadvantaged young people. So from the ages of 16 to 24. So the ELO coordinators very focused on those juniors and seniors, and for all juniors and seniors, and then the Children's Cabinet grants for the 5 community-based organizations was focused on more historically young people who may be a little more disconnected from school or have dropped out of school or maybe transitioning out of high school. So that's just a little bit of reminder of the young people that participated in both of those programs. The folks at the Data Innovation Project did not evaluate the JMG portion of the program because they are doing that work themselves, but there was obviously JMG also provided support for the leaders as well in terms of training. And so they were connected into the work, but not directly. They're young people who participated in their career exploration badge. So that's just a little more background on who was participated in the survey, but happy to answer any questions or discussion around, or if folks should close any questions, or if you have thoughts about those last couple of slides, would love to hear feedback on kind of next steps. Yeah, Amy.
Great presentation. I had a question for you. When you're working with the employers and doing the evaluation, did you find that many of them would take just one student, or a lot of the pictures you showed had multiple students in a picture? Like, how does that work best when they're bringing students in? Is it a group or just one or two? And then my second question for you was, how or were the employers and the students also connected on the back end to additional educational resources, to technical schools or to universities, like if they wanted to combine both the work and school piece moving forward?
Thank you. Yes, those are great questions. I'll start with the first one. I don't know the percentage at the top of my head, but the majority of the youth that completed the survey did have a one-on-one experience with employers. And so that's what a lot of our evaluation findings were around. The group efforts, it typically occurred, so thinking about the yellow side, when there was an employer that didn't have as much availability. So maybe it was just like a one day they'd come into the classroom and speak to a group of youth, or it could be a group of youth hop in a van and like go to a location for a day at a time. And so often the group experiences looked more like that. They were shorter. I don't have exact numbers to support that, but then can you remind me of your second question?
Just how these potentially got connected back to technical schools or universities, like further education opportunities with the job.
Great. Sarah, I see you shaking your head, so I'm wondering if you want to top it on this one.
Well, I think realistically, we didn't hear as much about that, and that is potentially an aspect of that pathway building that needs to continue. I think that was starting in the second year as the programs and the coordinators got more established to think about, okay, who else in the community or in, other areas should we be connecting with? But over the duration of the 2 years, I don't think that was a major theme. Year one was really about getting everything up and running, and year two, they were just starting to get connected into even their own school community. So I think that is kind of a next step, a next area to go. There were a few sites that were maybe a little bit more connected. I think there was one in particular that was a bit more connected to that adult education side and some of the humane system. And so there was a little bit more transference there, but I do think overall that's a growth area for some of these programs.
One other piece I'd add, just to provide some additional context about how the youth are thinking about those types of educational opportunities. So we saw about 7% of our youth who were surveyed describe being interested in starting a technical school program, and about 12% were interested in starting a career training or certification program. So it was slightly lower than some of the other kind of future goals that we saw, but still definitely there was some interest from some of our youth.
And Amy, I would just say in the technical side and the connection with the CTE programs, I think the hope with the Maine Career Exploration Program was to bring some of the CTE pieces into the high schools, because there are a number of places where high school students would like to be at CTEs, but they can't do that. And there's a lot more hands-on kind of that learning experience and work-based learning experiences at CTEs. So the hope was that career exploration would bring some of that to the high schools. And then the only other thing I'd add is the cohort model. Tree Street Youth did implement and still is running a cohort model, and they've found it really beneficial that peer support in a job site helps to build that confidence for the young people and those connections, that they don't feel as nervous about entering a career site or a workspace and work site alone. And it also means that if something happens and a kid oversleeps, or they're having a bad day, or something, transportation issues come up, that there are young people going to that work site and being able to provide that support and that work that the employer was expecting. So if one young person's missing, it's not as big of a deal. So that's proven to be really successful at Tree Street, and we should be thinking about how we pull out some of those smaller models and structures that have been put in place that I think are worth highlighting. Libby.
Good morning. It was exciting to see the results, and I think parallel a lot of what we know about work-based learning. So that was great. At the beginning, just thinking about some of the systems issues, I work for labor and rehabilitation services and vocational rehabilitation programs. And in the beginning, when this was launching, we did kind of here's how the two programs work together fact sheet. And based on this kind of reporting, it would be great to go back and look to see where we could change that up and strengthen some of those connections, just as we're talking about, so that we could really speak to those areas that were identified as gaps. I mean, I think about transportation as one good example, but there are probably some others in terms of the flexibility that was described. So when this final report comes out, has it been shared yet, Anna?
I'm going to share it right after we get
okay. It seems like a good opportunity for us to go back and revisit that, and then update and reissue as we start to talk to our staff about that collaboration again.
That's a great idea, Libby. And we actually have Karen Morin, who is the new Maine Career Exploration Coordinator, on the call, so she can help bring that together and pull us all together. It's a great idea, Libby.
Another question. Did you also ask parents, caregivers, others of the youth how they felt the program went? Did you get any feedback from them? I'm asking because my own child did an ELO project and went and was in the community. It was a shorter one, not as long as you guys are talking about, but I think they had a good experience, and they came back and did a presentation with some of the other youth in the school. But I didn't know a lot about it. I just kind of knew what I was hearing from him, and I just was curious what the families might know about the work that the children are doing.
We did not talk with any parents or caregivers of the young people. Honestly, tracking down the young people is difficult enough to get them to participate in surveys. It takes a lot of bandwidth. But we did anecdotally, I think, hear about some of the family impacts through the focus groups with some of the coordinators. They did share some of like that family and even community impact that just these experiences were having on their community as a little bit larger when the youth were presenting out on their kind of projects and that sort of thing. And so there were some examples of kind of a ripple effect or even some positive effects on on families, but it wasn't something that we were formally exploring or gathering for this evaluation.
And I'd say another kind of anecdotal piece coming out of some of the photo voice interviews. So a lot of those interviews were conducted, and the coordinator for that program was often in the room or kind of off to the side as the young person was being interviewed. And so there were definitely some instances where they would kind of jump in and contribute. And one of the things that I heard in 2 of my interviews was around parents really not knowing what to do with their kids before this program started, and kind of being concerned about them being disconnected from some of these things. And then as the program kind of went on, them being really excited about them being provided these opportunities that they didn't receive when they were going through school. So we did hear a little bit about that kind of family impact just from the coordinators and from the young people themselves in some of their interviews. And one of the other things that we heard from a couple of youth was around their parents, similar to what you described, Amy, being a little unsure about exactly what the program fully entails, but being very supportive. And one of the main things that we heard was that parents were really lifting up if transportation hadn't been available or provided for their youth, then their young person would not have been able to go to these work opportunities, because so many of their parents work and have full-time jobs and are, busy, busy, busy. So don't have the time to bring their youth to an experience. So the schools or community organizations being able to help with some of those transportation challenges really made it possible for their family to engage with the program. And so there was some appreciation reflected in some of those anecdotal pieces.
I'll just say from my own child's experience, like, I think that they know some of the businesses in town, but they actually didn't really know what the businesses did. So when they went out and did this experience, they're like, oh, this is great. I could come back after school and actually like get a job here. And like, I think that was really eye-opening for them as to what the groups actually do in the communities. So I think that generally he had a very positive experience.
That was actually, we had a quote about that too from one of the coordinators. I don't know if it's in the slideshow or just the report, Julia, around how one of the things that they enjoyed so much about this program was actually building the hope in the local community and for the young people to see a pathway without having to leave. Like, not saying of course we encourage young people to go out and explore the world, but that they saw a pathway within their own community, and building towards that was something that they appreciated and enjoyed about the program.
I will say, Sarah, it's in the report, not in the slideshow. But additionally, something I didn't mention from what's also in the report are that youth and employers also spoke about for some of those jobs that required college or another certificate, or, them being old enough, they couldn't hire youth in that moment, but they encouraged them to, go get the degree, go get the certification, and then come back and come work for them. And so that was a big piece too.
And you just sparked something else for me, Julia, that I just remembered, which is one young person was working at a veterinary clinic, one of our photo voice participants. And, she really found community there and found a space that she loved to work in. And they actually offered to be her placement as she goes through her vet tech program. So it was a really great experience for her to be able to kind of continue building those relationships she had started, and then start applying some of what she had seen them do in that setting. So she was very excited to have a really clear path forward. And she said, compared to some of her peers, she felt so much more confident about where she was going and what she was doing. So yeah, those are some of the cool little little waterfall effects.
Great. Great conversation, great questions. Any other questions before we hop off? Okay, great. Well, I'll make sure everybody gets a copy of the presentation and the full evaluation, which I must say is very easy to read and broken up nicely. And there's a nice executive summary at the beginning too. If folks don't have time to read the whole report, I definitely recommend opening it up and taking a look. Libby, I think we will definitely follow up with pulling together folks from DECD, DOL, DOE, and me, and talk about kind of next steps and thinking about how we continue to coordinate. The good news also is that because of the MGRP funding not being fully spent, some of this programming is continuing. So the Children's Cabinet grantees continuing the work, JMG is continuing the work. Some of the ELO program have been able to have no cost extensions to continue the work. And then, as you'll see in the report, there was another $1 million of state funding that helped to expand ELO programming as well. So lots of good work continuing to happen even after the 2-year evaluation. And again, thank you to the team at Data Innovation Project. It's been great to work with you guys, and so helpful to have this information as we move forward and think about next steps for this programming. So we will see everybody else. We will be back together on May 20th for the next Children's Cabinet meeting, where we'll be talking about the Child Safety and Family Wellbeing Plan. And if folks have updates that they want to provide to the Cabinet before May 20th or on May 20th, please let me know. We'll have time for updates and other discussion items as well. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you all so much. Take care.
Thank you.